Welcome to Coffee with the Sarlos. We are your hosts of the show, Karen and Kelly Sarlo. Whether you're struggling with grief or you just need answers, we connect you with spirit to find relief, clarity, and direction in life. We can help you move forward.
Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Karen. I'm ready for a lighter story today, please.
Yes, we've had a couple of weeks with some pretty heavy material, so I chose something more heartwarming for today.
Thank you.
This is a client session done over Zoom where I can see two people that have booked together, and it is a mother and her daughter. And I think the daughter, if I get the ages right, Kelly, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but she's in grade 9, so would that make her about 13?
Yeah, 13, 14.
Around that age? Okay. So we go through consent at the very beginning of the session. They did tell me that they were looking for medium. And the first, well, actually, it's the only person that comes through. Sorry, I was going to say the first person, is her brother. So he's older than her. He would be, I've got to think here, but like he's a few years older than her. So I'm just going to say he's about maybe 4 to 5 years older. But he had passed a while ago, like a few years ago. So we're going back in time, even though I'm trying to say her current age. So they said that's correct. That's who they were looking for, was her brother. And he started the session by saying to me things like, Karen, I died of cancer. And he said, and I was sick for years. And he said, this really took a toll on my family. And he said it was a painful cancer that progressed. And he said, so I just want to start by saying my cause of death. And he said, but I also want you to make sure that you say very quickly that I'm no longer suffering, that I don't still have cancer on the other side. And I thought, wouldn't they know that? And he said, no. He said, you're going to address things that my sister worries about and has worried about over the years. She doesn't worry about this anymore. She used to. But it's still going to be a validation for her because her and mom and dad had to go through lots of talks about being on earth versus being on the other side. And that, yes, this is what he went through, but that's not what he's going through anymore. So he said, you go ahead and you tell her that. And I said, okay. So I repeated it. And they validated that that was correct, how he died. And what I said about how he lived his life on earth and what it was like on the other side now. And you could see his sister look at her mom and smile. And just like a nice moment between the two of them. And then he said, okay, he says, I don't want to keep talking about my death. He says, I want to talk about some things that have happened since I've passed away. And he goes, and one of them is that my sister has taken a really strong interest in volleyball. And he says, I want her to know that she's changed positions on the court. And that when she was like in grade 5, 6, that, they move you all around the court. Okay. And then she goes into 7 and 8, like at a different school. And he explains that it's a different school. And so they try them out in different positions. And she went from being libero, which she thought was the star position on a volleyball team, because you're there to dig out that first thing. And if you don't do the digging, if you don't set it up right, then point. The point is lost with the libero. And I know you know that.
I think every setter would disagree, but go ahead.
Wait, it comes to that. And so he's going on and on about the libero, really making a case for the libero to be the best on the team. And he points out the reasons why, because she played it.
Best defense.
Yes. But there's so many sweet and cute moments where she wants to sit up in her chair and go, and she just wants to get in there. And her mom reaches over and just puts her hand on her daughter's knee. And it's like, shush. Let Karen finish. Let your brother finish speaking. like this. And she would say little things like, sweetie, we don't interrupt. Just very gentle, very kind. But you can, sorry, your mic is moving.
The dogs are a mess this morning, and I don't know if I'm going to eat my mic or what's happening. Go ahead.
We can't seem to get the podcast show going smoothly. Like, no matter how many times we try. It's like two children being in the room. So he's having a lot of fun telling his sister all the reasons why she should be libero and why it's the most important job on the team. And I thought I was just doing a great job. And then he says, okay, wait. He says, you go ahead and you say all of that to her first, but she's going to argue with you. So you need to write down on a little piece of paper, setter, like this. And I said, oh, what? Why? Tell me why, so that I can at least defend you. And he goes, oh, this is fun. You're going to defend dead people? And I said, all day, dear. Yes, I'm going to defend dead people. And he goes, oh, I appreciate that. He says, well, she eventually became setter, but I wanted to like really be a good brother and like give her a go for the money, like really like tease her, so to speak, and have a conversation back and forth. He says, that's why they've called. They want a conversation with me. He says, so I'm going to go on about the libero, but I want you to write down that I know that she's currently the setter and that she now firmly believes, because she's in the job, that without the setter, you don't have a point. Like this. So I said, okay. I said, give me a minute and let me write that down. So I wrote down about the setter. Then I went on and I continued and I argued about the libero. And I let her jump right in to defend the setter's position. And eventually her mom let her do it too. And she went on defending her position as setter and didn't tell me that she used to be a libero. So I quickly took my pen and I wrote down on the page that she used to be the libero, and then moved to the setter so that she would see that he knew the order of things and that he was messing with her, just as an older brother should, in a really fun way, right? Mm-hmm. So I went on. And then eventually I asked her if I could interrupt the conversation. And I held up the piece of paper and I let them read it. And I had it up to the screen, Kelly, over on Zoom, like up to the iPad or iMac. And I couldn't see their faces because I just wanted them to have a really good, clear ability to read the sheet. And I could hear them laughing. I tell you, what a good feeling it is to hear your clients laugh. Mm-hmm. When you know that they've lost a son and a brother. Mm-hmm. That was a great feeling. So then I took the page down, I put it in front of me again, and she said, that was really fun. She goes, do you do that often? And I said, I don't try to make a habit of it, no. But given the way that your message came out, it was the only way I could think of doing it without ruining your brother's fun to get you going. She said, oh, I really appreciate that. She says, it feels like I'm chit-chatting with him again. And she says, could you just go on? Could you just keep doing this? She says, can we just do this, Mom? Can we do this for an hour? And I said, well, no. I said, your mom booked a half hour. And she goes, well, Mom, can't you just pay more money? Can't we do a whole hour? She says, I just want to talk to him longer. And the mom asked me then if I could extend the time. And I said, no, because there was another client booked, but that they could enjoy the rest of their time and then call and book another appointment if they wanted. But he had more things that he wanted to say. So, Kelly, I forgot to name him at the very beginning because I just got super happy to be able to do a fun story today. So we're going to call him Quee. So the next thing he said to me was, I want to show you something and I want to explain it as I show it to you. So I told mom and daughter, I need a couple of minutes. He wants to show me things. And they just sat there and I could see the daughter looking at the mom and I could see that they were starting to ask, or she was asking her mom questions about like, how could I see something? But I tuned it out quickly so that I could participate in what Qui wanted to show me and listen to and engage in. So I did. So he shows me when they were younger. And so I can see his age change and I can see her age change. And I would put her maybe around, I'd say maybe around 18 months or so. And at that time, she's got a little sleeper, like a onesie. And she's walking into his bedroom. And she shows me that she's got curly ringlet hair. But if I look at the young woman around 13 sitting in front of me, her hair's very straight. So she's got these big, big curls and she's got her sleeper on. He makes it nighttime. It's his bedroom. So he shows me that she goes from her bedroom into his bedroom. And I see him like getting ready for bed. I see him then getting like into bed. So he's showing me at different stages that she'll come walking into his room. And she sleeps on the floor beside his bed. So she'll take her blanket or one in his room or one of his stuffed toys. She'll take something and she'll lay on the floor beside his bed. And then he'll say things to her like, you can get in tonight. Like this. And you see where she gets in the bed and she lays beside her brother and she takes her blanket or whatever she's got. And she has a variety of things. So there isn't one particular thing that she goes to bed with. And she'll sleep beside her brother. And then he'll say things to me like, yeah, I don't always let her do this. I make her sleep on the floor sometimes. I don't want her in my bed. So you see, sometimes she'll sleep on the floor. And sometimes he says things like, sometimes Karen, I go into her room so she can sleep in her own bed and I lay on her bed with her and I figure out that's a better thing to do because then once she falls asleep, she'll stay in her bed and then I can go back and I can have my own bed. But I'm showing you the transition over time. And I said, well, what kind of time? And he says, well, take a look. And he says, but I can also tell you. He says, take a look. So I watch and I see her growing. So she's not in a sleeper anymore. She looks like she's maybe 2.5, maybe 3 years old. And eventually it stops where he doesn't go into her room anymore. And so this lasts maybe a year and a half when she's, quite young. And he says, I want to show you that. And he says, because she's worried about me sleeping at night. This is a big deal. And I said, oh, okay. And he goes, go ahead, tell her this part first. Okay. So I tell her, and you can see where she starts to cry a little bit. So does Mom. And then you can also see where there's a feeling there. And I would just say it's all emotional, really, Kelly, because you can see, I think which is my opinion, of course, where they feel sad about it. It's a memory you're bringing up. But then you can also see, oh, hold on. He's here and he's talking to me and he's telling me about it. And I can hear them chatting a little bit between the two of them. And I can see where Mom is explaining it to her, which is very nice. I don't have to do all of the explaining. And then they ask me to continue. And he says, I wanted to explain this and talk about the sleeping stuff. He says, I'm going to go into the second part of it. He says, she asks my mom and my dad all the time if I'm cold at night. She asks Mom and Dad, like if she's cold, she thinks I'm cold. So if the weather changes every year, she'll kind of come back in and at some point it'll bug her. It'll bug her for a while. It might bug her for a few days, a few weeks, even a month. And then she'll go back and she'll ask Mom and Dad if I'm cold. And when I first passed, they put out a blanket and a pillow for me. And he says, so I want to validate that I knew I got a blanket and a pillow when I first died. And he says, now she's grown and they've explained several years in a row that I'm never cold and that I would have blankets and pillows on the other side. So I want to come in and validate for my mom and dad what they said to her. And that I got comfort on the other side. I got my needs met. That's what they were trying to teach her. Now she's old enough She's not asking if I'm cold anymore. Her beliefs have changed. She now believes I can take care of myself. She now believes that we get our needs met. And I said, that's really cool. Her parents did a really good job. And he said they did. They made every effort they could where they thought age appropriately. This is what her fear is. How do we meet her where her fear is? As opposed to, let's just change her beliefs and and jump too many steps. I'll word it that way. So they always tried to meet her where she was by listening to what her fears were and asking her what she thought, and then replying in that way. This is how we'll solve this problem at this point. And eventually that can keep changing. And that's how they approached it from the very beginning. And I just thought, Kelly, this was such a good thing to share with everybody listening, whether you're the grandparent talking to your grandchild about somebody who's passed, or a parent, an aunt and uncle, a friend, whatever the situation might be. I just thought the parents' approach was really terrific. So I explained that to mom and sister, and about the cold, and then about how they approached all of it. And mom stepped in and said, that's exactly right. And I'm so happy. And I can't wait to tell my husband that we nailed it. It feels damn good to know, because sometimes you just don't always feel like a good parent. You don't think you're getting it all right. And we worried constantly how we handled his sickness and his death for his sister, when we were also trying to do our own grieving and figure out how to meet each other's needs so that we didn't lose our marriage on top of losing our son. She says, so it's really good to hear that the hard work has really paid off. Thank you so much for telling us this, and I'll share it with my husband. So then Aquila said to me, my mom and dad also had other people come stay with my sister when I was, had people come and stay with me so they could go with my sister when I was sick, when I was still alive. And I want
With her.
to different events. So if they wanted to go out for a family dinner and he couldn't go because he was sick and he was in bed, or he was in a wheelchair, they had friends, they had volunteers, they called associations to say, could somebody come and give us respite care? So they made plans for people to come stay with him, and of course while he was still alive, so that both parents could go out with their daughter to participate and try to give her a normal life, because he was sick for years. And so over time they figured out, well, we can't keep trading off. We're never doing things with her as parents. She's always getting one parent. And this is not to put anybody down who's a single parent. Mm-hmm. This isn't about single parents being better than or worse than. That's not what we're talking about. We're simply talking about that this was a family of 4, and they wanted to give both of their children opportunities to have both parents. And it was harder and harder the sicker he got and the closer to death he got. And so they made the decision, we are going to ask other people to be with our son while we go and do things with our daughter. And he wanted to validate that. And he wanted to say, yet again, what had occurred, because that was just giving them a validation that I'm here and I know what you did, because there were times where he was sleeping for such long periods of time that he wouldn't know consciously what was going on. So he's just trying to validate different states of consciousness, different decisions, different thought processes, different needs for his sister, and also his mom and dad. Because as much as we might think that mom and dad are doing that for their daughter, they were also doing it for themselves, that they wanted to still be a couple as they were parenting their daughter, right? And they were trying to value all of the roles all of the responsibilities, and all of the choices that they could continue to create given the situation they were in, and not think they had less and less choices. They wanted to constantly say, well, maybe we don't. If we step outside of our current thinking and broaden the way that we think, what other choices could we always give ourselves? Which I think is just so freaking healthy. They just did an incredible job. And so he was trying to say to them, I know exactly what you were doing. I can see the thought processes that you were going through, trying to think what's best for him, what's best for them, and what's best for their daughter. Which, again, talk about levels of awareness and growth to say, okay, we're in a situation we don't want to be in. We wouldn't wish on anybody. But how are we going to get through it to the best of our ability? On top of the fact that we're going to grieve, we have to feel our feelings, but we still are going to go into the right side of the brain too, and we're going to go into logic. So they were trying to always manage both. And so I repeated that to the two of them, and the mom just sat there and said to me, my God, what you're doing for us as a couple and as individuals, as a mom, and then as a dad, she said, is just absolutely incredible, Karen. I thank you so much. And then you've got a 13-year-old who's turning around and looking at her mom and dad. And I heard her say to her mom, thank you. And I saw mom look at her daughter and go, oh, you're welcome, of course. Like, of course, honey. This is just what we do. This is our job. This is our responsibility as your parents. But you could still see the daughter at 13 years old, because of this gorgeous emotional intelligence they're raising in her, say, whoa, mom, I'm thanking you. And I just sat there and said, you have your moment. Have your moment. And we just got to sit in a moment together. And then I said to them, hey, and don't forget, your son is sitting here as you're having this moment. This is why he's bringing it up. He wants you guys to remember that as the two of you are sitting in this, he's sitting here with you through me to the best of my ability to give him to you. Oh God, it's just such a great moment for all of us. And then Qui says to me, hey, Karen, thank you. Mm-hmm. Like this. And then, my God, Kelly, I got to have my moment, but I also told them. I also said to them, after I felt that they had their time together, I said, I'd really like you to know that Qui has thanked me. And mom says, oh, that's good. Because now she's feeling pride.
Yeah, that's who she raised.
Yes. Exactly. Just, again, like such joyfulness being able to do this kind of session with them. Then Aquila says to me, I know my dad's not present. He says, I just want to validate that I know my dad is out right now, and I know what he's doing. I know he's going to get a new vehicle. And I'm like, a new vehicle? And he goes, yeah, they're just like every 4 years, what do you call that?
Lease.
Thank you. They lease a vehicle. And he goes, it's just time to get a new vehicle, but it's always a really fun time for them. They always go out for a drive in the vehicle. They always go get takeout food and sit in the vehicle, and they celebrate making their first mess in the vehicle. He says, and you know, they get crumbs. Like, they don't purposely. I'm not saying they squirt ketchup on the seats, but they take it and they break it in so that they're living in it. They don't treat it like it's how do you say that? Pristine. Mm-hmm. They don't live in fear. They have this attitude that you have to live well. So he says, I just want them to know I'm going for the drive. He says, I just want them to know that I keep doing the things that they do. I don't miss out on anything. He says, so I think I've made that point that I'm going to volleyball. He says, however, I just want them to know I'm going for that first drive. And so I said, oh, you guys are going for your first drive today. And they were ecstatic, Kelly. And I said, he says that he sits in the vehicle. He knows his seat, that sometimes his sister moves around now, but generally speaking, he would have his own window. Mom and Dad have theirs. And he says that he's sitting in his seat and that he's going for this first drive. Honestly, Cal, it was just absolutely a lovely way to end their session. They both thanked me profusely. The daughter said to me, I'm so glad that you brought up that he's in the vehicle, because now I don't have to look for birds. I don't have to look for butterflies.
Yep.
I can give up the damn dragonflies like this. And now I can just simply know that he's everywhere. He's on the volleyball court. He's just going to everything. I've just joined some new clubs at school. I know my brother's with me. She goes, I like what you've done. I can take it from here. She goes, I don't need to hold on to some of the things I did in the past. My parents have taught me that you use those things until you can let them go. And life is about letting something go when you've grown. She goes, so I'm just going to say, Mom, Dad, bro, Qui, I've grown. I don't need those things anymore. I've moved on. He's with me. It's a great lesson. And honest to God, I wish I could take all of these lessons and have this mom and dad go around to every school possible, or run some program for parents who lose children and teach other parents how to help their own children and themselves move through grief. Because boy, oh boy, Kelly, are they ever doing a great job of changing beliefs and making them applicable to healthy growth.
That's a really nice message, and maybe this is shitty of me to layer this in at the end of the podcast, but like, that's a testament to how they lived.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just walk around and tell people how to grieve.
True.
When you haven't lived in a family unit in a soulful way, when you're not raising your children in a soulful way. And when I say soulful, I'm talking about being fully engaged, involved, right? In love, not indifferent to your children, not indifferent to their care. Like, these parents are fully in the act of love with their children. And so grieving can be something different, right? For people who are going through losing a child where maybe they didn't have the capacity to care for them. Maybe they didn't have, and I mean capacity in terms of physical resources, but also the capacity to deal with a sick child on top of the relationship state that they might have had with their significant other. Like, grief has all of these other layers when the dynamics aren't healthy to begin with. So I think for people listening, it's not just, okay, we can accept a belief system and grief will be easier. It's how are you actually engaging while they're here?
Well said. I can't disagree with you. I can wholeheartedly agree.
And I'm glad they're working that hard, because they've got another generation in this young woman of health and love. Same. Thanks for listening to Coffee with the Sarlos. If you enjoyed the show today, help spread the love with a like, share, or review of the podcast. See you next Saturday with a brand new episode.